seriously, Democrats are asking themselves, quote, could Blue MAGA revitalize the party? We hear they're making blue hats that say make California great again and swapping out the Village People for Stevie Wonder. I guess if you just can't beat them, you join them. Democrats are admitting Trump was right about everything.
Nobody comes out looking better than Donald Trump and the MAGA right. Because the things that they were saying, the things that they were accusing the left of, the things that they were accusing legacy media of, whether it's true or not, they look right. They look like they were on point.
Democrats have never admitted we were right about anything, and now they're admitting we were right about everything.
Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining me here at Courageous Media, the Chris Highland Show. Really appreciate you rolling up. We've got a fantastic show for you today. We've got the fact that Trump was right about everything. We're going to replay that little clip from Jesse Waters because he's absolutely correct. Trump was right about everything. It's absolutely amazing to see. Thanks so much for joining in. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get back into Jesse Waters as he leads in to our first topic for the day, and that is that Trump was right about everything. Here we go.
We were right about anything, and now they're admitting we were right about everything? I don't even know how to take that. It's never happened before. They're all saying, you got us, we lied.
Democrats just spent 4 years arguing that the border was fine, inflation was not a problem, and Joe Biden was up to the job. And I think that 4 years of that message was really harmful. I think there are a lot of reasons why there are crises in confidence in the news media, in Democratic Party, in institutions. And I think all of it needs to be hashed out, acknowledged, and discussed.
Was that Tapper or Hannity? This isn't fun anymore. What's the point of having two parties if one side just keeps saying the other side's right? Did Democrats just surrender? Tapper's even saying we were right about lawfare.
I think it is problematic when people run for prosecutor and promise to go after a specific politician. And both Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, and Alvin Bragg, the District Attorney of New York, both of them did that. And that, to me, is problematic because you're not saying this is the offense and we need to bring justice to this perpetrator. You're saying, I'm going to go after him. And I think that there was a degree to which that was tolerated by the media writ large.
I'm glad he's...
Wow. Something that was tolerated by the media writ large. It was tolerated by you, Jake Tapper. Let's not forget that this is the same Jake Tapper who didn't once. Where was the outrage? Where was the indignation about Letitia James and Twinkies Bragg saying they were going to get Trump, running on they were going to get Trump, getting elected on no matter what? They were going to get Trump because he was too pale, too stale. And what was the other one? Whatever it was. Anyway, so they campaigned on it. But where was Jake Tapper 3 years ago when this was going on? Where was his indignation? Nowhere to be found, because Jake Tapper, although he had a show every single night on CNN, said nothing of this stuff. But now he's trying to make money. He's grifting off a book, and it's not working. First of all, I think the book is a bestseller, but I've also heard reports that it's not selling as well as they thought it would. But we're going to get into that. But also, the ratings on his CNN show have cratered, because the Dems, the libs, have stopped watching it because now he's a traitor. And the right, the Republicans, never watched it, are never going to watch it because he still has no credibility. He could have talked about this every night on his show for the last 2 years and did nothing. All right, let's keep going. Before we do, thanks so much for joining, everybody. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Here we go.
Saying it, but why didn't he say it on his show? The guy was on the air for what, 2 hours a day?
Yes.
CNN called it the trial of the century. Now Tapper's saying, yeah, it was all cooked up by Tish and Fat Alvin. It's not like this was even covered up. There was tape of Tish and Bragg saying it. Even Morning Joe's admitting Republicans were right about everything. But they're taking credit for it.
If you were a conservative at Harvard Law School, anytime you opened your mouth, you better have thought through it about 20 different times, because you were going to get crushed. Whereas, and here's the important point, now we talk about why the left may be adrift and at loss. The other side of that is the intellectual laziness that that occurs every time you open your mouth, and they all agree with you.
Yeah.
Really, Joe Scarborough, the intellectual laziness. Where was this level of, shall we say, introspection when you literally went on your show and said, I'm going to tell you the truth, and F you if you can't handle the truth. This is the best Joe Biden I have ever seen. Hey, where's that clip now that Tapper's rolled out with his book? Huh? Where is that little clip now that everybody knows Biden was a cognitive vegetable? Where is that clip now that everybody knows Biden wasn't running the country? It was being run by a cabal of insiders, including his wife, his son, his wife's chief of staff, and an auto pen. Where is that clip now, Joe Scarborough? This is absolutely amazing. Trump was right about everything. Here's Stephen A. Smith in a little extended clip from what we saw earlier in his own words that Trump was right about everything. Now, Stephen A. is not willing to come right out in a minute, but listen to what he says.
This isn't some gotcha moment. I'm trying to catch somebody in a lie, whatever. I'm going to ask the questions that people want to ask. I saw Jake Tapper's and Alex Thompson's interview with Megyn Kelly. Obviously, she leans heavily to the right, and she had her issues with Jake Tapper, which I thought were astutely and adroitly done by her. Kudos to her. I'm a little bit different. I'm more curious than anything else because this is a lane I'm venturing into, not a lane that I've lived in for decades. And I thought that the questions that needed to be asked were asked, and I thought that he answered them. I think there's a lot for Jake Tapper to be concerned about from the standpoint that he's a co-author of this book. And there's a lot of cynics and critics out there who believe that he had to have known more before the election.
Of course he knew. Everybody knew. You even have Piers Morgan, who was never a big conservative. He's always been a lib, saying he could see it from England that Joe Biden was decrepit. He couldn't walk upstairs. He couldn't walk downstairs. He fell off stages. He shook hands with the air. He couldn't get through a sentence. They jump cut 57 times for a 30-second clip. He could see it. Jake Tapper didn't have to have any inside knowledge. If this was Donald Trump acting this way, every single news media would have covered it 24/7. Jake Tapper would have spent 1 hour and 57 minutes of his 2-hour show talking about it. Where was that level of interest with Joe Biden? Nowhere to be found, because they didn't want to do anything that would benefit Trump.
As opposed to learning all of this after the election. He had an answer for that. I think that legacy media, as we know it to be, is in a world of trouble because people believe that it has an agenda. He swears that's not the case, and that hasn't been the case. And had this been something that he was aware of prior to the election, you're damn right he would have reported it, because it would have been good for him. It would have been good for the network. It would have been good for his career. It would have been good for the industry.
No, it wouldn't have been good for it would have been good for the industry. It wouldn't have been good for the network because they got funded through USAID and the federal government. It wouldn't have been good for him or his career because him and his career was dependent on towing the globalist cabal party line. Hence, Trump evil, Biden good. Oh, Biden's cognitively declined now. Okay, Biden bad, Kamala good. Oh, Kamala didn't win. Okay, everybody bad. It's absolutely been a grift and a propaganda machine from the get-go. It has been Pravda from the old Soviet Union, 100%. Stephen A., open your eyes and smell the coffee, to combine metaphors.
Alex Thompson, we heard his speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner from months ago, and he held the media accountable, talked about the media, included himself, by the way, and how the media needed to do a better job. So what do we appeal from all of this? It's very, very simple. Do your damn job. That applies to me. That applies to Jake Tapper. That applies to Alex Thompson. That applies to everybody in the media. It's not about friendship, and it's not about making enemies. It's about getting as close to the facts as you can possibly get to and being honest, upfront, and authentic as to where you stand and why with an audience. So even if they disagree with you, they at least know that you're true and authentic. And as a result, you've expressed yourself. They can be cynical or critical about anything that you have to say. But if you're honest and upfront and you stand on that and you're not taking sides, then you're good to go. However, having said all of that, there is no way to get around what I'm about to say. When you consider this book, Original Sin, and what the members of the Biden administration, along with other people in the political apparatus that is the Democratic Party, when you could take into consideration what several folks, if not many, were willing to do to conceal the cognitive decline that President Biden was enduring, nobody comes out looking better than Donald Trump and the MAGA right. Because the things that they were saying, the things that they were accusing the left of, the things that they were accusing legacy media of, whether it's true or not, they look right.
They were right. Everybody knows it's true. Everybody around the world knew it was true. Stop mincing words, Stephen A. Stephen A. keeps trying to straddle this line because he wants to be a lib and he wants to get paid by ESPN, so he can't actually come out and say the truth, whether he believes it or not, because again, he voted for Kamala, he voted for Biden, he voted for all these people. He should stick to sports, frankly. But he is probably the closest thing to an honest broker in the liberal hack media. And he's a political neophyte, but he's probably the closest thing to an honest broker in the propaganda liberal media, which is really sad. But this comes back to the fact that Trump was right about everything. Now, I want to play this clip. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has nothing to do with cognitive decline, but I found this oldie but goodie. I think you're going to love it. It just buttresses the fact that Trump was right about everything. Check this out. This is going to make you laugh.
The encroachment.
Did it again in September when he went to the UN and said something about Germany that was so detached from reality, even the German delegation couldn't help but laugh at him.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
The EU gets nearly a quarter of its energy from gas, and nearly half of it comes from Russia, the world's largest gas exporter. Since the invasion of Ukraine began, Germany has paid Russia about 220 million euros a day for gas.
I love the end. Exactly. Trump was right about everything. The only reason that Putin has been able to start and maintain this ridiculous war in Ukraine is because countries like Germany were paying him $200 million a day. Just think about that. $200 million a day. That's what? That's 720 million, 7 billion, 70 billion a year. Regardless of what they're giving to Ukraine, which wasn't much, they're giving Russia 70 billion a year. Trump was right about everything. And then this happened, which I just had to include because this is absolutely hilarious. Here we go.
Give me all of them. Look. See that? Trump was right about everything. It came in. Somebody said, I said, this was sent in by a fan. I said, I think we should make some of them, right? But we were pretty much. You want one? Are you allowed to take one? Because he'll consider it. I know him well. He's sort of a stiff. Brian, you're not a stiff. You're sort of a stiff guy.
Trump was right about everything. Now, one final clip. Stephen A. was on with Cuomo, and they were talking about this, everything that's been going on. And I think it bears checking in with this.
Obvious to you, what was obvious to me, right? But we weren't in the business of doing what we could to make sure that Biden won, right? I mean, that's really what this was about. It wasn't, I don't think anybody in good faith can say Shit, I didn't know. They really put it over on me. I had no idea that Biden had any kinds of issues with his age or his stage.
Correct.
It's what you chose and how you dealt with people. Do you blame the party, or is this about the media?
I blame both. I blame both because the party went out of its way to influence the media, and the media went against its obligations to capitulate. And that's not something that we're supposed to do. Now, understand, you're a journalist. I've been a journalist, obviously, for many years and what have you. We understand when you're cultivating sources and you're cultivating relationships, nobody tells every truth that they know. We understand that. But there's one thing to gauge what's important, what is the biggest story, what are must-haves and must-dos, and what is taboo, what to avoid, what to make sure that you don't capitulate and acquiesce to. And that's not what the media on the left did. And I hate to say the media on the left as if I'm on the right, because that's not where I'm coming at it from. I'm coming at it from a perspective where there was clearly individuals in media influenced by the powers that be on the left to ensure that they said there were certain things that they were willing to say and disseminate, and there were certain things they were willing to deny, omit, suppress, etc. And when that's a reality, as it pertains to the presidency of the United States of America, that's bad in and of itself. But it's happened throughout history. I'm quite sure every administration, we can look at it. Where it really, really gets ugly is when we take into account cancel culture and how the slightest thing anybody did, the slightest agreement anybody echoed or verbalized, your job was on the line. Your career may have been on the line. That level of bullying, that fright that they tried to implement into...
It wasn't bullying. Come on, Stephen A. The only bullying took place when people, because some of these media companies would absolutely threaten paychecks. Sure. But they didn't have to do that a lot because none of these quote unquote journalists ever wanted to print the truth. Just like 60 Minutes re-edited Kamala's interview to make her sound halfway cognitive when she was a complete and utter imbecile, when her answer was wandering word salad. They wanted to do that. They weren't forced to do it. Nobody was forced to not cover the Biden story. They didn't want to cover it. Yes, there was the added bonus of I get to keep my paycheck. My paycheck gets to go up. But you were in the same boat. Stephen A. was in the same boat. Yes, he did sound the alarm a little bit on Biden's cognitive decline, but then he turned around and said, but I'm voting for Kamala. Why? Because that cover-up, the cover-up of the Biden cognitive decline, the Biden health problems, the fact that he was incapable of being the president of the United States is the biggest scandal in American history. We had a president who was not a president. We had a president who was incapable, and the country was being run by a cabal of insider bureaucrats, including, and one of them, she's not even a bureaucrat, was his wife. She was not elected. Hunter Biden was not elected. Her chief of staff was not elected. All of the insider admins were not elected. That's who was running the country. We had unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats making decisions. Hence, the country went completely skewed to the progressive left. And although he was willing to call it out a little bit, Stephen A. Smith was not willing to stand up on principle and say, I will not vote for the party that did this. That's the problem. That's the bigger problem. But again, it goes back to Trump was right about everything. We on the conservative right were basically right about everything in this case.